The sky burned orange and red as another explosion shook the ground. Smoke rose from the broken buildings of Colony Helix 7. The Drakthir had come again, thousands of them pouring from their dark ships like a flood of death. On the front line, human soldiers stood in their heavy armor. They fired their weapons without stopping. They did not run. They did not hide. Among them stood a man called Taiho. The aliens who fought beside humans called him the Unbroken Wall. He had earned this name through blood and pain. Taiho was tall and broad. His armor was black and covered with marks from old battles. Some marks were burns from plasma fire. Some were deep scratches from enemy claws. Each mark told a story of a fight he had survived. He raised his rifle and fired 3 shots. 3 Drakthir fell to the ground. More came. They always came. Hold the line. Taiho shouted to his soldiers. His voice was calm even in the chaos. They will not pass us today. The soldiers believed him. They had followed him through a dozen battles on a dozen worlds. He had never lied to them. When he said they would hold, they held up far above the battle. The flagship Eternal Dawn floated in orbit. Commander Yuna watched the fight through her screens. She was Valari, her skin pale blue and her eyes like silver coins. The Valari were an old race. They had traveled to stars when humans still lived in caves. They believed themselves better than all other species. "The humans are holding," said an officer beside her. "Impressive for such a young race." Yuna made a small sound of agreement. "They are useful in war. Strong bodies. Simple minds. They follow orders well." This was how most Valari thought of humans. Good for fighting. Good for dying. Not much else. On the planet below, Taiho did not know or care what the Valari thought. He had a job to do. He had people to protect. That was enough. The battle lasted 6 more hours. When it ended, the Drakthir retreated to their ships and fled. The colony was saved, but the cost was high. Many soldiers lay dead in the streets. Most of them were human. Taiho walked through the aftermath. His armor was cracked in 3 places. Blood ran down his arm from a wound he had not noticed during the fight. He stopped beside each fallen human and spoke their name quietly. He would remember them all. A transport ship came to take the survivors back to the Eternal Dawn. Taiho was the last aboard. He sat alone in the corner and closed his eyes. He did not sleep. He never slept after battles. The faces of the dead kept him awake. When the ship docked, Taiho walked through the bright halls of the flagship. Valari officers passed him without looking. Servants moved out of his way quickly. He was used to this. Humans were not welcome in most parts of Valari ships. They were tools to be used, not people to be respected. But Taiho had a special duty that gave him access to places other humans could not go. For 3 years, he had served as the personal guardian of Princess Hana. Hana was the youngest daughter of the Valari High Council. She was beautiful in the way all Valari were beautiful, with perfect blue skin and long silver hair. She was also young, only 20 years old by human counting. The council had assigned Taiho to protect her when threats against the royal family increased. At first, Hana had complained. She did not want a human following her everywhere. She said he smelled wrong. She said his presence embarrassed her in front of her friends. The council did not listen to her complaints. Taiho stayed. In 3 years, he had saved her life 7 times. Once, he had jumped in front of an assassin's blade meant for her heart. The scar ran from his shoulder to his hip. Once, he had carried her through a burning building when enemy forces attacked a peace conference. The burns on his hands took months to heal. Hana had never thanked him. Not once, Taiho reached the royal quarters and stopped outside the main door. He took a moment to check his appearance. His armor was damaged but still functional. The blood on his arm had dried. He wiped it away as best he could. Then he pressed the entry signal. "Enter," came Hannah's voice from inside. Taiho walked in and immediately dropped to one knee. This was the proper way for a guardian to address a princess. He kept his eyes on the floor. "The battle is won, princess," he said. "Colony Helix 7 is secure. The Drakethur have retreated." Hannah sat on a long couch, looking at her datapad. She did not look up at him. She did not acknowledge his wounds or his service. "How many did we lose?" she asked. Her voice was bored. 47 Valari soldiers. 212 humans. Unfortunate. She still did not look up. "You may go." Taiho stood. He bowed his head. "Yes, princess." He walked to his usual position, 3 steps behind her and to the left. He would stand there for hours if needed. He would stand there without food or water or rest. This was his duty. Hannah finally glanced at him. She noticed the cracks in his armor, the blood on his sleeve. For just a moment, something flickered in her silver eyes. It might have been concern. It might have been curiosity. Then it was gone. "You should get that fixed," she said, pointing at his armor. "You look terrible." "Yes, princess." She returned to her datapad. Taiho returned to his silence. Outside the window, stars sparkled in the endless black of space. Somewhere out there, more enemies gathered. More battles waited. And Taiho would fight them all, for a princess who would never see him as anything more than a tool. But he did not feel sorry for himself. He had made a choice to protect her. He would keep that promise, no matter how she treated him. That was simply who he was. The victory celebration filled the grand hall of the Eternal Dawn. Lights of every color danced across the ceiling. Music played softly in the background. Hundreds of guests moved through the room, dressed in their finest clothes and speaking in careful, polite voices. The Valari loved these events. They were a chance to show off wealth and power. They were a chance to make connections and break enemies. Politics hid behind every smile. Princess Hannah stood near the center of the room. She wore a long dress of silver and white that matched her hair. Jewels hung from her neck and ears. She looked perfect, as a princess should look. Taiho stood 3 steps behind her. He wore his dress armor, black and plain compared to the bright colors around him. His face was hidden behind his helmet. He was easy to ignore, which was the point. A good guardian should be invisible until needed. Valari nobles approached Hannah one by one. They praised her beauty. They praised her intelligence. They said nothing about the battle that had just been won or the soldiers who had died winning it. Taiho listened to everything. He watched everyone. His eyes moved constantly, looking for threats. Even at a party, danger could appear without warning. After an hour, Princess Curie arrived. She was Hannah's older sister and everything Hannah wanted to be. Curie was graceful and confident. The council listened when she spoke. Other nobles feared her sharp tongue and quick mind. "Little sister," Curie said, kissing Hannah's cheek. "You look lovely tonight." "Thank you, Curie. You look beautiful as always." Curie smiled and turned to the group of nobles who followed her everywhere. They were the most powerful people on the ship, lords and ladies who controlled whole star systems. "We were just discussing the battle," Curie said. "Such a waste of resources. The council should have sent more ships instead of relying on ground forces." A lord named Sung nodded his head. "The humans fought well enough, I suppose. But they lacked the strategic thinking of our commanders. They simply throw themselves at the enemy and hope for the best. Like animals," added a lady beside him. "All instinct, no intelligence." The group laughed softly. Taiho heard every word. His hands stayed relaxed at his sides, but inside his chest, something tightened. Curie noticed Taiho standing behind Hannah. Her silver eyes narrowed with amusement. "Speaking of humans, sister, you still have your little pet, I see." Hannah felt her face grow warm. her sister's approval meant everything to her. She wanted Curie to respect her, to see her as an equal. Having a human guardian made her look weak. "The council insists," Hana said quickly. "You know I did not choose this." "Of course not." Curie looked at Taiho like he was a piece of furniture. "Still, it must be annoying, having that thing follow you everywhere." This was Hana's chance. She could defend Taiho. She could mention the times he had saved her life. She could say something kind. Instead, she laughed. "You have no idea," she said. "Look at him standing there like a trained animal. They follow orders well enough, I suppose. But have you ever tried having a real conversation with one? They mistake loyalty for intelligence. He probably thinks I actually value his presence." The nobles laughed louder this time. Curie smiled with approval. Lord Sung raised his glass. "Well said, Princess. Perhaps there is hope for you after all." Hana felt a warm glow of acceptance. Finally, her sister's friends were treating her like one of them. Finally, she belonged. Behind her, Taiho did not move. His breathing stayed steady. His posture remained perfect. But beneath his helmet, his jaw tightened. And his hands, hidden at his sides, slowly curled into fists. The party continued for hours. More insults were thrown. More jokes were made at human expense. Taiho heard them all. He stored them away in the same place he stored his pain, somewhere deep and dark where it could not affect his duty. When the celebration finally ended, Hana returned to her quarters. She was happy from the attention, warm from the wine she had drunk. For once, she had felt like a true princess, not a little girl pretending to be important. Taiho followed in silence, as always. At the door to her rooms, Hana stopped. She turned to look at him. The wine made her bold. The success of the evening made her cruel. "You know what you are, do you not, Taiho?" He stood at attention. "I am your guardian, princess." "No." She stepped closer. "You are a weapon, a tool. The council assigned you to me because humans are expendable. When you die protecting me, and you will die protecting me, they will simply send another. You are not special. You are not even necessary. You are just convenient." For a long moment, silence filled the hallway. Then Taiho reached up and removed his helmet. Hana had not seen his face clearly in months. She had not wanted to. Now she could not look away. His skin was marked with scars, old and new. His dark eyes held a tiredness that went deeper than lack of sleep. But there was also something else there. Dignity, quiet strength, a refusal to break. "As you say, princess," he said softly. Then he did something she did not expect. He began removing his armor. First the chest plate, blackened with plasma burns from Nexus Station. He set it on the floor. Then the shoulder guards, cracked from a collapsing wall on Outpost Kira. They joined the chest plate. Then the arm pieces, the leg pieces, the gauntlets, the boots. Each piece of armor told a story of pain suffered in her service. Each piece represented a moment when he had chosen her life over his own safety. When he stood in only his simple underclothes, Hana saw the full truth of his sacrifice. Scars covered his body, burns and cuts and marks from wounds that should have killed him. A map of 3 years spent protecting someone who had never once said, "Thank you." "I resign my commission," Taiho said. His voice was quiet but clear. "I wish you well, princess." He turned and walked away. Hana watched him go. She wanted to call him back. She wanted to say something, anything. But her voice would not work. The armor lay at her feet, silent and accusing. For the first time in her life, Princess Hana felt something she had never felt before. Shame. The news spread through the fleet like fire through dry grass. Taiho, the unbroken wall, had resigned. He had walked away from Princess Hana. No one knew exactly why, but everyone had their guesses. Rumors flew from ship to ship, growing stranger with each telling. At first, the Valari did not care. One human leaving was nothing important. There were thousands more to take his place. The galaxy would not stop turning because a single soldier had quit, but then something unexpected happened. Other humans began to leave. It started slowly. A sergeant here, a captain there. They came to their commanders with resignation papers in hand. They were polite. They were respectful. They gave proper notice and followed every rule. "I wish to return to Earth," they would say. "I thank you for the opportunity to serve." No anger. No complaints. Just quiet, firm decisions. By the end of the first week, nearly 200 humans had resigned from Valari service. By the end of the second week, that number had doubled. Human soldiers, engineers, pilots, and medics were all leaving. They packed their bags and boarded transport ships, heading back to human space. The Valari High Council called an emergency meeting. "This is unacceptable," said Councilor Myra, her blue face tight with anger. "We have treaties with the Terran Republic. They cannot simply remove their people." "They are not removing them," another councilor replied. "The humans are choosing to leave." "That is different." "It is the same thing. Without their soldiers, our defensive lines will collapse. We need them." The room fell silent. It was rare for any Valari to admit needing humans for anything. The doors opened and Admiral Doyon walked in. He was the commander of all human forces serving under Valari authority. He was an older man with gray hair and a face like carved stone. He had served in space longer than most Valari had been alive. "Counselors," he said, bowing slightly. "You asked to see me." "Admiral, you must stop this," Councilor Myra demanded. "Order your people to stay." Diane did not answer immediately. He looked around the room at the faces of the Valari leaders. Some looked angry. Some looked worried. None looked respectful. "Counselors," he said finally, "I cannot order free people to stay where they are not wanted." "Not wanted?" "We have given them the honor of serving alongside the greatest civilization in the galaxy. You have given them the honor of dying for a people who see them as tools." Doyen's voice remained calm, but his eyes were hard. "My soldiers have bled for this alliance. They have lost friends, family, and years of their lives fighting enemies that threaten Valari worlds. They ask nothing in return except to be treated with basic respect." He placed a paper on the table. His own resignation. "The Terran Republic will honor all existing treaties," he continued. "Our ships will still answer calls for aid. Our diplomats will still attend meetings. But our soldiers will no longer serve under Valari command. Not until things change." The counselors stared at the paper like it was a poisonous snake. "You cannot do this," Mira said, but her voice was weaker now. "I already have." Diane bowed again. "Good day, counselors." He turned and walked out. The meeting fell apart into shouting and blame. No one could agree on what to do. Some wanted to force the humans to stay. Others pointed out that forcing them would break the treaties they needed. Some even suggested, quietly, that perhaps the Valari had made mistakes. Those voices were quickly silenced. Far from the council chambers, Princess Hana sat alone in her quarters. She had not left her rooms in days. The armor Taiho had left behind still lay where he had dropped it. She could not bring herself to move it. She had tried to sleep, but could not. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face. Not angry, not hateful, just tired and sad and disappointed. "You are just convenient." Her own words echoed in her mind. She remembered how clever she had felt saying them, how adult and important. Now they made her sick. A servant came to tell her that her new guardian had arrived. He was Valari this time, young and eager to prove himself. Hannah sent him away. She did not want a new guardian. She did not deserve protection. KY Uri visited on the third day. She did not offer comfort or understanding. "This is embarrassing," Kiri said coldly. The whole fleet is talking about how you broke your human. Now the council is dealing with political problems because of you. I did not mean for this to happen. Of course, you did not mean for it. You never think about consequences. That is your problem, little sister. You act like a child and then wonder why things fall apart. Curie left without saying goodbye. Alone again, Hana walked to where the armor lay. She knelt beside it and picked up the chest plate. It was heavier than she expected. She ran her fingers over the burn marks, the scratches, the dents. For the first time, she tried to imagine the stories behind each mark. The pain, the fear, the choice to keep going anyway. She thought about all the times Taiho had stood behind her, all the meals she had eaten while he went hungry, all the nights she had slept safely while he watched over her without rest. What had she ever given him in return? Nothing. Worse than nothing. She had given him cruelty and called it honesty. Hannah held the armor against her chest and did something she had not done since she was a small child. She cried. When the tears finally stopped, something had changed inside her. She did not know yet what she would do or how she would fix what she had broken. But she knew, for the first time, that she wanted to try. Somewhere in the ship, heading toward a transport that would take him back to Earth, Taiho walked alone. He carried nothing with him. Everything he owned, he had left behind. A young human soldier stopped him in the hallway. "Sir," the soldier said, saluting, "I just wanted you to know. We are all leaving because of you. Because if they can treat you that way, after everything you have done, then none of us matter to them." Taiho looked at the young man for a long moment. "Do not leave because of anger," he said quietly. "Leave because you deserve better. There is a difference." The soldier nodded slowly. "Yes, sir." Taiho continued walking toward the transport bay. Behind him, the Valari fleet was learning a hard lesson. Loyalty given freely could also be taken away, and once it was gone, it was very hard to earn back. The attack came without warning. One moment, the space around the Eternal Dawn was peaceful. The next moment, hundreds of Drakethor warships burst out of hyperspace. They came from every direction, more ships than anyone had ever seen gathered in one place. Alarms screamed through the flagship. Lights flashed red. Crew members ran to their battle stations. But it was already too late. The first wave of enemy fire tore through the Valari escort ships like they were made of paper. Explosions lit up the darkness of space. In seconds, half the fleet was destroyed. "All hands to emergency positions." Commander Yuna shouted from the bridge. "Return fire! Return fire!" But the Valari guns could not hit so many targets at once. The Drakethor ships swarmed around the flagship like angry insects. Their weapons struck again and again. Deep inside the ship, Princess Hana felt the floor shake beneath her feet. She was thrown against the wall as another explosion rocked the vessel. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in red. "Princess, we must evacuate," her Valari guardian shouted. He grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the escape shuttles. They ran through corridors, filled with smoke and screaming people. Bodies lay on the floor. Some were moving, some were not. Hannah had never seen death this close before. She had never smelled blood and burning metal. They reached the shuttle bay. Dozens of small ships waited there, ready to carry survivors away from the dying flagship. The Guardian pushed Hana inside the nearest shuttle and climbed in after her. "Hold on," he said, starting the engines. The shuttle lifted off and shot toward the bay doors. Other shuttles followed. For a moment, Hana thought they might actually escape. Then the Drakethor fighters found them. Energy beams flashed past the shuttle windows. Another escape ship exploded nearby, close enough for Hana to see the people inside burning. She screamed. Her guardian flew desperately, dodging and weaving between enemy fire. He was skilled, but there were too many enemies. A beam struck their engine. Then another hit the wing. "We are going down," the Guardian shouted. "Brace yourself." The shuttle spun out of control toward a small moon below. Hannah closed her eyes and prayed to God she had never believed in. The crash was violent and loud. Metal screamed as the shuttle tore itself apart on the rocky surface. Hannah was thrown against the restraints so hard she thought her bones would break. Then everything went dark. When Hannah woke, she was lying in the wreckage. Her head hurt terribly. Blood ran down her face from a cut above her eye. Her left arm felt wrong, maybe broken. She looked around for her guardian. She found him still in the pilot's seat. His neck was bent at an impossible angle. His eyes stared at nothing. Hannah had never seen a dead body up close before. Now she had seen dozens in one day. She wanted to scream. She wanted to cry. Instead, she forced herself to move. She crawled out of the broken shuttle and looked around. The moon was dark and cold, covered in gray rocks and dust. In the sky above, she could see flashes of light from the battle still raging. Then she heard sounds that made her blood freeze. Clicking noises, hissing, the sounds the Drakethir made when they hunted. She turned and saw them coming over a ridge. 5 enemy soldiers, their black armor reflecting the distant battle light. They had seen the crash. They had come to finish any survivors. Hannah tried to run, but her injured arm screamed with pain, and her legs were weak from the crash. She fell after only a few steps. The rocks cut her hands and knees. The Drakethir soldiers came closer. They were taking their time. They knew she could not escape. This is how I die, Hannah thought. Alone on a cold moon, killed by monsters. And I deserve it. After everything I have done, I deserve this. She closed her eyes and waited for the end. The sound of a gunshot made her jump. She opened her eyes and saw one of the Drakethir soldiers falling. A hole burned through its chest. Another shot. Another soldier fell. The remaining 3 enemies turned toward the source of the attack. More shots rang out, fast and precise. Each one found its target. In seconds, all 5 Drakethir lay dead on the ground. A figure emerged from behind some rocks. He wore armor that did not fit him properly, pieces taken from different sets. He carried a rifle that looked like it had been repaired many times, but Hannah would have recognized him anywhere. "Taiho," she whispered. He reached her quickly, checking her injuries with practiced hands. His face was covered in dirt and blood. A wound on his forehead dripped red down his cheek. But his eyes were the same as she remembered. Calm, focused, alive. "Can you walk?" he asked. "You came back." She could barely form the words. "How are you here? Why?" He did not answer her questions. Instead, he lifted her carefully over his shoulder, mindful of her broken arm. Then he started moving across the rocky ground. More Drakethir soldiers appeared in the distance. Taiho set Hannah down behind a large rock and raised his rifle. He fired 3 times. 3 enemies fell. He picked her up again and kept moving. For hours, this pattern continued. Walk, hide, fight, walk again. Taiho seemed to know exactly where the enemies were before they appeared. He moved through the darkness like a ghost, always finding paths they could not follow. When Hannah was thirsty, he gave her his water. When she was cold, he wrapped his outer coat around her. When enemies came, he put his body between her and danger without hesitation. 4 times, she heard bullets hit him. 4 times, he kept moving like nothing had happened. "You are hurt," she said weakly. "I have been hurt before." "Taiho, please. You need to stop. You need to rest. Rest comes later. First, I get you to safety." Finally, after what felt like forever, they reached a ridge overlooking a small valley. Below, Hannah could see the lights of an Alliance rescue camp. Ships were landing, picking up survivors from the battle. There, Taiho said. His voice was strange now, thick and slow. You will be safe there. He started down the ridge, but his steps were unsteady. Hana looked at him properly for the first time since the rescue. His borrowed armor was destroyed, torn apart by enemy fire. Blood soaked his clothes in multiple places. Taiho? He fell to his knees. The rifle dropped from his hands. He tried to stand but could not. Hana scrambled to his side, ignoring the pain in her own arm. She saw the wounds now, 4 bullet holes in his chest and stomach. He had been dying this whole time. He had carried her for hours while bleeding out. Why? She cried. Why did you come back? After everything I said to you? Taiho looked at her. Despite the pain, despite everything, he smiled slightly. Because you needed me, he said. That is all that ever mattered. His eyes closed and he collapsed onto the cold rocks. Hana screamed for help. She screamed until rescue soldiers came running. She screamed until they loaded Taiho onto a stretcher and carried him to a medical ship. And as they flew away from that terrible moon, Hana held his hand and made a promise. If he lived, she would spend the rest of her life making things right. If he died, she would never forgive herself. The hospital room was quiet, except for the soft beeping of machines. White walls, clean floors, the smell of medicine in the air. Taiho lay in the bed, his eyes closed. Tubes connected him to devices that monitored his heart and pumped blood into his veins. Bandages covered his chest where doctors had worked for 12 hours to save his life. He had almost died 3 times on the operating table. 3 times his heart had stopped. 3 times the doctors had brought him back. Outside his room, Princess Hana sat on a hard bench. She had been there for 5 days now. Her arm was in a cast. The cut on her head had been stitched and bandaged. But she refused to leave. Nurses came and went. Some brought her food that she barely touched. Some told her to go rest in a proper bed. She ignored them all. On the 6th day, her sister Curie came to see her. You look terrible, Curie said, standing in the hallway. This is ridiculous. He is just a human. Come back to the ship. Hana looked up at her sister. For the first time in her life, she did not feel small under Curie's gaze. He saved my life, Hana said. Again, after I treated him worse than dirt. After I called him a tool and said he did not matter. He was doing his job. No, Hana shook her head. He had resigned. He had no job. He had no duty. He came back because he chose to. Because despite everything, he's a better person than I will ever be. Curie stared at her. Something in Hana's eyes made her step back. You have changed, Curie said. I am trying to. Curie left without another word. On the 10th day, the doctors told Hana that Taiho was awake. But when she tried to enter his room, a nurse stopped her. He does not want visitors, the nurse said gently. I am sorry, Princess. Hana nodded slowly. She understood. Why would he want to see her? She had given him nothing but pain. His refusal to see her was fair, but she did not leave the hospital. Every day, she came and sat outside his room. She brought nothing to do. She simply sat and waited. Sometimes she talked to the nurses. Sometimes she sat in silence. But she never left. On the 15th day, a nurse came out with a strange look on her face. He says you can come in. Hana stood so quickly, she felt dizzy. She smoothed her clothes with shaking hands. Then she walked into the room. Taiho sat up in bed, thinner than before. His scars were more visible now, standing out against his pale skin. He watched her approach with eyes that were guarded and uncertain. Hana had prepared many things to say. She had written speeches in her mind, long explanations, careful apologies. Instead, when she reached his bedside, she fell to her knees and began to cry. I am sorry, she said through her tears. I am so sorry. I was cruel and blind and foolish. You gave me everything, and I gave you nothing but pain. I do not deserve your forgiveness. I do not deserve anything from you. She could not stop crying. All the shame and guilt she had carried for weeks poured out of her. Taiho was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm. I heard every word you ever said to me. Every insult. Every cruel joke. Every time you looked at me like I was less than nothing. He paused. I heard them, and I stayed anyway. Hana looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. Why? She whispered. Why did you stay? Because I believed that underneath the cruelty, there was someone worth protecting. Someone who could become better. He met her eyes. Was I right? The question hung in the air between them. I do not know, Hana admitted. But I want to prove that you were right. Even if it takes the rest of my life. Taiho studied her face for a long moment. Whatever he saw there made him nod slowly. Then prove it, he said simply. 6 months passed. The alliance changed during that time. The Valari High Council, facing pressure from the Terran Republic and their own people, agreed to new treaties. Humans were granted full partnership in the alliance. Equal seats at the council table. Equal respect for their sacrifices. Admiral Doyan returned to service. Human soldiers began serving alongside Valari again. But things were different now. The old insults stopped. The cruel jokes disappeared. Something had shifted. Princess Hana worked every day to change herself. She studied human culture and history. She learned their language properly. She visited human worlds and talked to ordinary people. She listened more than she spoke. When Valari nobles made comments about humans being lesser, Hana spoke against them. When laws favored Valari over other species, she argued for change. Her sister Curie called her a traitor. Hana did not care. Taiho left the hospital after 2 months. He did not return to Hana's service. He did not return to military service at all. Instead, he took a small apartment on a quiet station and spent his days reading books and watching stars through his window. Hana did not push him. She did not demand anything. She simply sent him messages sometimes, telling him about her day. He did not always reply. When he did, his answers were short. But slowly, over months, the answers grew longer. One day, Hana sent him a message asking if he would like to have dinner with her. Not as a princess and guardian. Just as 2 people. He said yes. They met at a small restaurant with no fancy decorations or expensive food. Hana wore simple clothes instead of royal dresses. She felt nervous in a way she had never felt before. They talked for hours. She asked about his childhood on Earth. He asked about her fears and dreams. They discovered small things they shared. A love of quiet places. A fascination with ancient stars. A hatred for vegetables served cold. It was a beginning. On their 3rd dinner, Hana gave him a gift. He opened the wrapping carefully and found his old chest plate inside. The one he had left on the floor outside her room. It had been cleaned and repaired, but every scar and burn mark was still visible. I wanted you to know that I see them now, Hana said softly. I see all of them. And I understand what they cost you. Taiho held the armor for a long time. His fingers traced the marks from battles fought to protect someone who had not deserved his loyalty. Then he set the armor aside and took her hand instead. I think I would rather not wear armor around you anymore, he said. Hana squeezed his hand, feeling tears forming again. But these were different tears. Happy ones. Good, she said, because I would rather see you. Outside the window, stars sparkled in the endless black of space. The same stars that had watched centuries of war and pain and misunderstanding between species. But tonight, they watched something else. Something small but important. Two people from different worlds sitting together, trying to build something new from the pieces of what had been broken. It would not be easy. There would be hard days ahead. Old habits to break. New trust to build. A galaxy that still had much to learn about respect and equality. But they would face it together. And that was enough.